If you saw this plant for the first time, you probably wouldn't think twice about it. Most people don't. It floats on the surface of still water, ponds, ditches, small lakes. It looks like tiny green dots spread across the water. No stems, no branches, no flowers you can easily see. Many people call it pond scum. The plant is called duckweed, and its smallest type is called wolffia. Wolffia is the smallest flowering plant on Earth. That alone should make it interesting. But for most of history, it wasn't. Duckweed didn't grow in fields. It didn't need soil. It didn't grow tall. It didn't fit into neat rows. So it was ignored. Before we go any further, it's important to understand how this video works. We've split this story into 3 parts, so everything stays clear and easy to follow. In part 1, we'll explain what duckweed actually is, how it grows, and why scientists started paying attention to it. In part 2, we'll look at what duckweed does better than most crops, especially how it turns waste into food. And in part 3, we'll explain why, despite all of this, duckweed never became a major food crop. Nothing complicated, just step by step. Let's start simple. Duckweed is a water plant. It floats. It doesn't have roots like land plants. Instead, it absorbs nutrients directly from the water around it. Think of it like this. If fertilizer leaks into water, if animal waste enters a pond, if nutrients build up in still water, duckweed feeds on that. And it feeds very fast. Under the right conditions, warm temperatures, sunlight, and nutrients, duckweed can double its size in 24 to 48 hours. That means if you have a small amount today, you can have twice as much tomorrow. Very few plants on Earth can do that. Scientists noticed this early. In the 1950s and 1960s, agricultural researchers began studying duckweed as animal feed. One of the early researchers was Dr. Robert C. Skillicorn, who worked on aquatic plants and later helped document duckweed's growth potential. What they found surprised them. Duckweed wasn't just fast-growing, it was nutritious. When dried, many duckweed species contain 30 to 45% protein. That's similar to soybeans. Some species also contain iron, calcium, and essential amino acids. In very simple terms, duckweed turns dirty water into food. That idea attracted attention far beyond farms. In the 1980s and 1990s, scientists at NASA began researching closed-loop life support systems. These are systems designed for space missions, where astronauts must grow food, recycle waste, and survive in a sealed environment. Dr. Raymond Wheeler, a NASA plant scientist, studied fast-growing plants that could recycle nutrients efficiently. Duckweed, especially wolffia, stood out. Why? Because it grows fast, because it wastes almost nothing, because nearly all of it is edible. In space, efficiency matters more than appearance. NASA didn't study duckweed because it was trendy. They studied it because it solved problems. On Earth, duckweed also caught the attention of community projects. In Bangladesh, Vietnam, and parts of Thailand, small-scale farmers used duckweed as feed for fish and poultry. Fish ponds covered with duckweed produced healthier fish using less commercial feed. In India, researchers tested duckweed as a supplement for livestock feed, reducing costs for small farmers. In Europe, wastewater treatment plants experimented with duckweed to clean water while producing biomass. Everywhere it was tested, the results were similar. Duckweed worked. So why didn't it spread? Because duckweed doesn't behave like a crop. It doesn't wait to be planted. It doesn't respect property lines. It doesn't need fields or tractors. And most importantly, it doesn't need much from companies. Duckweed grows where nutrients exist. It reproduces by cloning itself. It can be harvested with nets instead of machines. That makes it incredibly efficient. and incredibly hard to control. In modern agriculture, control matters. Uniform crops are easier to manage. Predictable harvests are easier to sell. Slow growth fits planning schedules. Duckweed does none of that. It grows when conditions are right, it slows when they're not, it doesn't ask permission. So instead of being promoted as food, duckweed was quietly labeled something else. Feed, biomass, wastewater plant, anything except crop. And once something isn't called food, people stop seeing it that way. In the next part, we'll go deeper into what duckweed actually does, how it cleans water, produces protein, and challenges the way we think about farming itself. Because the problem with duckweed was never that it didn't work, it was that it worked too well, in ways the system wasn't built for. In the first part, we talked about what duckweed is and why scientists noticed it. Now comes the part that makes people pause. Because duckweed doesn't just grow fast, it cleans water while it grows. Let's explain this in the simplest way possible. Most plants take nutrients from soil. Duckweed takes nutrients from water. When water contains excess nitrogen or phosphorus, often from fertilizers, animal waste, or sewage, duckweed absorbs those nutrients directly. Those same nutrients that cause algae blooms and polluted lakes, duckweed eats them, and then turns them into plant matter. This is why scientists describe duckweed as a biological filter. Instead of machines, chemicals, or energy-intensive systems, duckweed uses sunlight and growth to clean water. One of the scientists who documented this clearly was Dr. Cheng-Yi Fang, who studied duckweed in wastewater treatment systems in China. His research showed that duckweed ponds could significantly reduce nitrogen and phosphorus levels in contaminated water. At the same time, the duckweed itself could be harvested and reused. Clean water on one side, protein-rich biomass on the other. This idea wasn't theoretical. In Bangladesh, community-based fish farming projects used duckweed to clean pond water while feeding fish. The duckweed absorbed nutrients from fish waste, reduced water pollution, and then became fish feed. Fish grew faster, water stayed cleaner, costs went down. In Vietnam, integrated farming systems combined duckweed ponds with rice fields and fish culture. Duckweed reduced the need for commercial feed and helped stabilize pond ecosystems. In the Netherlands, wastewater treatment facilities experimented with duckweed lagoons as a low-energy way to clean agricultural runoff. Everywhere it was tested, the same pattern appeared. Duckweed solved two problems at once. It reduced pollution, and it produced food. Now let's talk about protein, because this is where things become uncomfortable. Protein is one of the most expensive parts of the food system. Producing it usually requires large amounts of land, fertilizer, water, and energy. Duckweed requires almost none of that. According to research published by Dr. Klaus Appenroth, a leading duckweed biologist in Germany, many duckweed species contain a protein profile comparable to soy, including essential amino acids. In simple terms, duckweed can produce high-quality protein using sunlight and water that would otherwise be wasted. No fields, no tractors, no replanting. That efficiency raises an obvious question. If protein can be produced this cheaply and quickly, what happens to systems built around scarcity? This is where duckweed starts to feel uncomfortable. Duckweed doesn't scale the way industrial agriculture scales. You don't plant thousands of acres, you manage water surfaces. You harvest continuously instead of seasonally. That makes it ideal for small communities, urban environments, and decentralized food systems, but less ideal for centralized control. Large food systems prefer crops that move through predictable steps: plant, grow, harvest, ship, sell. Duckweed skips several of those steps. It grows continuously, it can be harvested daily, it doesn't require replanting. That breaks the rhythm of modern farming. There's also the question of appearance. Duckweed doesn't look like food to most people. It's green, tiny, and unfamiliar. That matters more than we like to admit. Foods that look strange face resistance no matter how nutritious they are. Researchers understood this early. That's why most duckweed projects focused on animal feed, not human food. Fish and poultry don't care what something looks like. People do. So duckweed was quietly redirected. Instead of being developed as a food crop, it became feed, biomass, and wastewater solution. Useful, but secondary. And once something is categorized that way, it rarely returns to the center. Yet the efficiency never disappeared. Duckweed continued to grow in places people weren't looking, in ponds, in treatment facilities, in research papers. Waiting. In the final part, we'll talk about the real reason duckweed never became mainstream food and why that question is being reopened today. Because the biggest challenge duckweed faced wasn't scientific, it was social. By now, one question should feel unavoidable. If duckweed grows this fast, cleans water, and produces protein so efficiently, why isn't it part of everyday food? The answer isn't hidden. It's structural. Modern food systems are built around control. Control over land, control over planting schedules, control over harvest timing, control over storage and transport. Duckweed resists all of that. It doesn't grow on owned fields. It grows on water. It doesn't wait for planting. It reproduces continuously. That makes it difficult to fit into the standard agricultural model. Researchers understood this early. In the 1970s and 1980s, several studies suggested duckweed could be used directly as human food after drying or processing. Dr. Carol Landholt, a Swiss botanist who spent decades studying duckweed taxonomy and biology, documented its nutritional value and growth behavior in detail. The science was not the barrier. Acceptance was. Duckweed looks unfamiliar. It doesn't resemble traditional vegetables. It challenges cultural ideas of what food should look like. That alone slows adoption. But there was another issue. Duckweed reduces dependence. It can be grown locally. It can be harvested daily. It does not require seed companies, fertilizer chains, or seasonal planting. That makes it powerful for communities and inconvenient for centralized systems. Food systems favor crops that move through long value chains. Each step adds cost, control, and profit. Duckweed shortens that chain dramatically. In small-scale trials, duckweed allowed farmers to feed fish and poultry without buying expensive feed. In wastewater systems, it reduced the need for chemical treatment while producing usable biomass. These are benefits, but not profitable at scale in the usual way. So duckweed remained a solution, not a product. It was supported in research papers. It was tested in pilot projects, but it was never pushed into mainstream agriculture. No bans were issued, no laws were passed against it. It simply wasn't promoted. And in modern systems, what isn't promoted disappears. But something has changed. Pressure is returning. Protein demand is rising. Feed costs are increasing. Water pollution is worsening. Energy prices are unstable. Problems duckweed quietly solves are becoming expensive again. That's why interest has returned. In Israel, researchers are studying duckweed as a sustainable protein source. In the Netherlands, startups are revisiting duckweed-based feed systems. In Asia, traditional uses are being re-examined with modern processing methods. Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly. Because systems don't reverse overnight, they test first. Duckweed is no longer being asked to replace agriculture. It's being asked to support it, to clean water, to produce protein locally, to reduce waste. And this time the question is different. Not, does this work, but where does this fit? Duckweed does not belong everywhere, but it belongs somewhere, and that alone challenges a system that prefers one-size-fits-all solutions. Duckweed's story teaches something important. Some solutions don't disappear because they fail. They disappear because they create dependence. They operate quietly. They reduce complexity. They give control back to biology. And biology doesn't invoice. Duckweed was never too small to matter. It was too efficient to prioritize. Now, as costs rise and margins tighten, efficiency without dependence looks different. It looks necessary. The smallest plant on Earth was never insignificant. It was simply waiting for conditions where simplicity became valuable again. And that moment is approaching, not with announcements, but with research, pilots, and quiet reconsideration. The knowledge never vanished. It was just floating, unnoticed, on the surface.